Let the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable to you, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Well, good morning. It is a delight to be here in sunny and warm Palm Beach at Bethesda-by-the-Sea. I've come from New York, where it is not warm and is rarely sunny these days. So thank you very much for having me here. And I'd especially like to thank Father Tim and the rest of the team here at Bethesda-by-the-Sea for what has just been a remarkable and wonderful welcome over these last couple of days. And it's a special privilege for me to be amongst so many generous friends and supporters to Episcopal Relief and Development. The Gospels are full of stories of people behaving badly towards Jesus. We've come to expect poor treatment from the Pharisees or from Pontius Pilate. In such cases, the clear power dynamic vividly shows us Jesus standing up for the disadvantaged and those on the margins of society in the face of authority figures who prioritize their own interests and power over those of the marginalized and the poor. However, this passage from Luke presents a bit of a challenge. The people who are mocking Jesus are not prominent authority figures. They're criminals and low-level Roman soldiers. We might have expected the crucified prisoners to stand in solidarity with Jesus. After all, they were victimized by the same soldiers that are standing in front of them at that moment. Instead, one of the prisoners joins the soldiers in deriding Jesus and questioning his status as the Messiah. This reveals a sad truth about the world then and the world today. Often, those who seek to make the world a better place are sometimes looked down upon, even by those who would benefit from the world becoming a better place. It's worth noting that the other prisoner, however, does exactly the opposite. He defends Jesus. In that moment, he becomes a disciple of Jesus. And Jesus' response is to offer him salvation. By standing up for those who are vulnerable, as the prisoner does on Jesus' behalf, we draw closer to God's kingdom and become Jesus' disciples. It's often complicated, difficult, and thankless work, but it is crucial. It can be hard to be a disciple of Jesus. Nevertheless, it is vital to continue to do God's work in the world today. How are we meant to do this? In Matthew 25, Jesus states it very clearly. Feed the hungry, welcome the stranger, give water to the thirsty, and heal the sick. In some, he says, truly I tell you, just as you did it to one of the least of these who are members of my family, you did it to me. You and I are meant to be Jesus' hands and feet in the world today. Indeed, Episcopal Relief and Development exists to enable all of us to extend Jesus' healing to those both near and far. And I'm going to share with you a little bit about how we, with your help and support, answer the call that Jesus asks all of us to take up. One of the most rewarding parts of my job is to visit the sites where we work around the world. And earlier this year, I traveled to Zambia to visit the Moments That Matter program, which is our flagship early childhood development work. Episcopal Relief and Development and the Zambian Anglican Council Outreach Program, or ZACOP as it's known, initiated the program over 10 years ago, making it now a mature and well-developed program. I've had the privilege of doing many program visits during my tenure as president of Episcopal Relief and Development, and I find something new and unexpected and indeed inspiring almost every time. Moments That Matter focuses on the first 1,000 days of a child's life, the quality of care that a child receives during those first 1,000 days are going to have a lasting impact on the life of that child, sometimes through their entire life. And that's why investing in parents, caregivers, and young children from birth to age 3 is so important. Episcopal Relief and Development and Zadok promote nurturing care that fosters responsive caregiving, good health, nutrition, and early learning and play, while working to reduce unhealthy environmental factors like poverty, malnutrition, and exposure to corporal punishment. Each community participates in an 18 to 24-month-long cycle of learning and promoting best practices for early childhood development. After each cycle, there's an opportunity to re-up for another cycle. The idea is that by the 3rd cycle, the program will be self-sufficient, with only very light oversight. During my recent trip, I sat in on a home visit in a Cycle 1 village where an early childhood development promoter, which is a trained local volunteer, visited a caregiver's home for one-on-one instruction on good parenting skills. Both the engagement of the promoter and the caregiver, who in this case was the grandmother, was remarkable to see. The grandmother was incredibly generous to let me enter her home to observe such an intimate interaction between her and her grandson. Next, I visited a Cycle 3 village where the promoters and the program were now almost entirely run independently, with minimal involvement from outside. In these villages, the promoters already have the training, so the primary learning switches from home visits, one-on-one visits, to larger group visits. At the end of the class, the promoter asked their students, "What do you take home from these lessons?" And everyone's hand went up immediately. They discussed how they had transitioned from corporal punishment for discipline to instruction and teaching about good behavior. They also shared how they had reviewed the colors and the shapes with their children, as well as their focus on providing nutritious meals for their kids. Over and over again, I heard the phrase, and I told my friends about it, and I told my neighbors about it. In this line of work, that's the best thing that you can hear. If you do a program over and over and over again, and nobody ever adopts the practices or shares the practices, your program isn't working. Now, not only were the promoters essentially running the program themselves, but the participants were passing on the lessons, making the positive parenting practices of Moments That Matter part of the local culture. Now we and Zadok can bring Moments That Matter to new communities, knowing that the work that we put in place and have already done in these other communities will be kept alive by the community itself, which was always our goal from the beginning. Several years ago, I made a similar visit to a community in northern Ghana, where we'd been working to reduce child mortality. The visit had just concluded, and I delivered some of my formal remarks of thanks and greetings on behalf of the Episcopal Church. And I was gathering my hat and my camera to make my way to the vehicle and to start my long journey back to New York City. At that point, the village headman came forward to say that he had a presentation to make to me on behalf of the entire village. And as I sat back down, the headman said that although they had a gift to give to me, they were very embarrassed, as it was such a small and a poor gift. He told me that they wanted to give me an elephant as a gesture of thanks, as that was the grandest gift they could imagine presenting to show how important the work was to their community. However, he was embarrassed to say they were too poor to give me an elephant. I was trying to imagine how I was ever going to get that elephant back to New York. Instead, he said that all of the family heads had met that morning to discuss what would be the most valuable gift that they could give to me to show their gratitude for all that had happened in their community. And they had decided to collect all of the eggs laid that day and to present them to me in a bowl. He explained that the eggs represented the entire village's wealth. And while it wasn't very much, they wanted to share it with me. They painted the bowl in vibrant colors, and included a picture of a flower growing out of a pot of soil. He told me that the flower represented the abundant life that the Episcopal Church had brought to their village. He asked that I bring the bowl back to New York and to show it as a sign and symbol of their thanks and their love for us. I keep this bowl in my office as a constant reminder of the abundance that can grow out of such scarcity. Truly, I tell you, just as you did it to one of the least of these who are members of my family, you did it to me. This applies at home, in our churches, and everywhere we work. Thank you for bringing the good news to the poor and fulfilling your baptismal covenant to seek and serve Christ in all people through your support of Episcopal relief and development. Whenever I visit beautiful churches like yours, I'm reminded of the story of one of the great cathedrals in England. I think it was probably Coventry. It was severely damaged during the Second World War. The roof was destroyed, the windows were all smashed, and the walls were very heavily damaged. Miraculously, though, the statue of Jesus with his arms outstretched suffered no damage, except that the hands were knocked off. When reconstruction got underway, people naturally wanted to replace the hands. No, the dean said, we won't replace the hands. They serve as a wonderful reminder that in this world, Christ has no hands but ours. Amen.